Most hobby distillers don't realize how much this one change affects ABV, yield, flavor and cuts. Let me go show you what's the difference between pot still and a column still. Hey everyone, Distiller Greyling here, one of your favorite home and hobby distillers. Yes, today we'll do the same pot, the same boiler charge, the same day. The only difference is whether we're going to run it as a pot still or a column still. We will show how this one piece of equipment can let your still behave in two completely different ways. So what is our experiment? We're going to have the same starting ABV, we're going to have the same amount of volume, we're going to have the same heat input, and we're going to have the same collecting cups. The only difference is how the still inside the vapor path is separated. So remember, in chemistry and also in product development, we were talking about doing one change at a time, changing one thing at a time. And that's what I'm trying to do today. I'm going to run a pot still, and then after that, we're only going to change the way things are separated. All right, so let me build my pot still, and then I'll explain to you what's going to happen. So this is my setup as a basic pot still. Obviously you can change the parrot to only having the direct collection point right here. But I still want to use the parrot. I still want to check the ABV as the run goes. But I'll also probably add just either the thermometer right here on top, or my small reflux condenser, my defraginator just for height, just to lift everything a little bit up. It's also going to stand on the induction stove, so it will also lift the base a little bit up. But don't worry, that's for me to figure out. We'll still do the run. So what do we have here? So pot still basically is that your vapor rises only once. You'll have your boiler charge here. Vapor will go up and over, and that's about it. You will have a little bit of reflux here in the limbic head, but not very, very much. And then also you'll have very little internal separation. There's no bubble caps, there's nothing that will force that liquid vapor to separate. It's just maybe a little bit of reflux in here. This will also carry a lot of flavor from your boiler all the way over, and will then also give you a lower ABV here at the end, and it will have a wider cut range. It will have a bit more of a smearing effect. We normally say that what boils here will come across. So pot still, very simple, very useful if you want to do something with a lot of flavor. So very, very good as well. Okay, let me build the column still, and then I'll get that one explained. Alright, this is my column still setup. As you guys would have seen, I've also added the 4-inch side glass at the bottom with a 4-inch bubble cap. And then right here on top, I'll have my normal 4-plate glass column bubble tray as well. That will also help with the separation. So basically, a column still is the vapor will repeatedly get separated. Remember now, at each plate, as well as a 4-inch bubble plate, your liquid will go lie, and that liquid level that's lying there will actually entrap some of the vapors and the molecules, and it will separate again. So that vapor will then turn back into a liquid, and some of them will fall down all the way to the boilers, some will just lie on the plate, and some of the vapors will escape up as well. So you'll have a lot of separation inside your still as well. You'll also have that internal separation multiple times as we go through. You will also then have a higher purity ABV that comes out from this side. With the higher percent ABV that comes out, you also have lesser flavor. So that's also something to remember. In a column still, you will have less flavor that comes out. And you will also see we'll have tighter cuts. You will not have that smearing effect. Everything would be nice and clean, tight. You know, we would normally say that in a column still, you will have multiple mini distillations in itself. You know, you will have almost like another distillation, another distillation, another distillation, another, because every time a distillation is just a separation of the liquids that we want to try and do. And each time it's here, the product will get more pure, more pure, more pure. So by the time your vapor does rise all the way to here, you will have a very much purer product that comes out than what was in the boiler at the bottom as well. All right, so what we are going to do now today is that I'm going to do 2 runs. I've got my charge here. So what I have got is a recovered alcohol from a bunch of flavor runs and gin mishaps that I had when I was still in Gauteng. So I distilled everything out on a higher reflux run just to try and get all the alcohol out as much as I can. So I'm sitting here with a 93% ABV alcohol. So it's nice and strong, proof is very high. I am going to dilute this down to 35% ABV for my boiler charge, and I'm going to end up with 3 liters of product. I'm going to split it into 2, 1.5 liters each, and then I'm going to fill the boiler with a 1.5 liter, 35% ABV, and then run both times. This still tastes slightly of gin, a little bit of juniper as well as star anise, so it still has got a little bit of flavor. I also want to see how this flavor will then carry over between the pot still and the column still, 2 separate runs as well. All right, so next step, when you will see me, we will start with the pot still run. I'm gonna get this diluted and charge it, and then we'll get our run going. All right guys, so we got fairly everything set up the way I wanted. Played around with the configurations and decided, you know, I want to keep that pot still as straight as possible. So limiting any extra metal, any contact as much as possible, and only want to have the boiler, the limit head, and a 180-degree bend going down. So we're going to force that vapors down as quickly as possible. All right, so to get back to our boiler charge as well, is I've got here 93% ABV, now gin-like product right here, roughly about 1,130 milliliters of it, and here I've got normal water, about 1,870. So the idea is to add both of them together just to give me around 3 liters of product at 35% ABV. So as you can definitely see, this one is still very high proof. I mean, it drops till my 93 still, so I'm very happy at this one. In here, I can just show you guys that it's just plain normal water. I mean, it floats at 0, so just plain water. So I'm just going to add these 2 together now, and then get our 3 liter where we want it. So you'll definitely see molecules mixing. It will almost look like not very clear at all, a bit mercury, but it's fine. Mercury, milky, and then it will definitely get more transparent again. All right. Okay. So let's see if my calculations is correct. Like I said, I want about a 35% ABV. So let's just have a look at what this guy does. Spot on, and I'm happy. All right, so we got 35% ABV here, roughly at 3 liters. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir and then split these 2. I'm going to add 1.5 liters straight into the boiler. Currently, the boiler is empty. So we're going to charge 1.5 liters at this 35% ABV. and then we're going to build our pot still. There is still, like I said, a little bit of a gin taste, so it's also going to see how this transfer over as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it changes or not change at all. We'll definitely see. All right, just going to leave this a second to mix. As you can see, it molecule still needs to get time to settle and mix as well. I can see it still looks a little bit of milky-ish, you know, not so clear as transparent, but it's definitely getting more transparent. And I can also definitely feel that it got hot, showing that exothermic reaction from the high proof alcohol with the water. I still love that science that comes through. Chemistry, you can never escape it. Alright, so I'm fairly happy with this. So yes, I'm just going to slowly add this now into here and hopefully get to that 1.5 liters. I will throw it in, and then maybe start to throw it in a little bit slower, trying to get to the end. Probably would have been better if I throw it in something else. But let's see. If I do spill, I will just make up some more again. I'm going to spill. So let me get it into a better holder and then we'll get cracking. I'm quite happy now. So we've got 1.5 liters in now, and I can see there's still 1.5 liters left in my jar. It's exactly what I wanted. So we'll use this to charge the column still. So I'm going to build the pot still, the rest of the pot still back together, get the stove on, get our cooling water on, and then I will talk to you guys again after the results. Alright everybody, we are back. So pot's still set up. I've got that 1.5 liter charge in here, 35% ABV. Like I said, I pushed for the shortest route that I could. So it's only the pot and navigate 180-degree bend. Got my condenser straight down here with my collecting parrot, and I will still be able to see exactly how much it is. I'm closing the bottom part, this bottom valve, because there's no need to capture anything straight from the bottom. I only want to capture it here on top, and then we can get cracking. So the heat I am going to keep exactly the same at an 800 watt input. So putting 800 watts, just writing it down. Time I'm sorting, just writing more or less. Obviously no distillate yet. And temperature is about 25 degrees Celsius. It is a little bit cooler today, especially this last 2 days. We had some really hot days this past week, but it's actually very nice and cool. It's a little bit cloudy, so it's actually perfect for distilling. I will not get as hot as we did with our product development gin run. The induction plate was actually a little bit hot and it tends to switch off every now and again. So hopefully today we will run very smoother as well. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, very little charge, so it should warm up quite fast as well. I am definitely going to have a look. As there is no glass section, you can't really see what is happening, but I will definitely keep an eye on the temperature as well, and then also just feel every now and again how is everything heating up. That will also give me an indication of what is at that stage. Cooling water is open, so the whole condenser is currently full of cold water as well. So plan is that I want to collect about 40 mils cups and then just stack them out. It's not about defining the cups today, you know, your heads, hearts and tails. It's about how much cuts I get out. So the plan is I'm also going to run it till 10% ABV and then see how many cuts do we have. And then exactly the same we're going to do with the column still. Still going to use the same cups to collect at 40% ABV and also see how many cups do we actually get out. That's the thing that's going to be. We're going to compare the cuts, how many cuts between the two runs we are going to get. And also the first ABV that comes out, what is that, how long it takes. That's the type of stuff we're going to do today. It's not necessarily about taste. Like I said, because it has a little bit of a gin's taste, I am going to taste it afterwards and see how does the pot still compare to the column still. But for now, just going to let it run. I'll chat with you as it goes through. Maybe I'll do a voiceover, we'll see. But it's just about getting this rundown done and then see how it ends up. But I think I will leave the camera on for a while so you guys can at least see how it's going through. Alright, so for the pot still, we got a charge of 1.5 liters at 35% ABV. We're running it on 800 watts on my induction plate. So if I look at key things for this run, it took about 12 minutes for the parrot to start filling. So let's say my first drips was after 12 minutes from starting. Starting temperature was about 25 degrees on the boiler, and the parrot started filling at 75 degrees and it filled up nicely. First ABV percentage that did start to show on the parrot was at 85% ABV. That's when I also started with my cuts. It could be, the reason why it could be high is the fact that the heater or my induction plate started overheating a little bit. So it wasn't really made for running very long. And I then added the fan just to blow the warm or the hot air from the back of the induction plate away, and that kind of caused a little bit of extra reflux in the boiler. So it's just something to take note, but it's not always to say that when you do a pot still that your run will be at 85% ABV. It can also be the way my design is, my alembic head especially. A lot of times I would see that the guys would just take an old keg, 50-liter beer keg, and make a still from it. Those ones are not so sufficient if you do not really have some type of a packing material or column on top. So then you might get a little bit more flavor and your starting ABV will be much lesser. You're looking then maybe something in the deep 70s and not as high as 85. But for my run, I was very happy with that. My output speed, let's say my total run was 1 hour and 25 minutes on the pot still. If I look at the overall run and how it ran, you can say it was stable, but meaning stable is that everything went up gradually. Looking at the boiler temperatures went up gradually and the ABV went down gradually. Everything happened in a more gradual manner. There wasn't sudden drops or sudden changes. It also shows how your pot still gives you a bit of a smearing effect out in the end of the run as well, and not just clean pure runs, but that's how you get that flavor as well. Alright, if I look at ABV percentages, so my 40% ABV on the parrot, then that was about an hour's run in, and roughly at the 20 cup mark, and then it still went slowly down, but then after about cup number 22 it just started dropping down much more quicker. But that's okay, that's also your tails now, that will drag out a little bit. Overall, I'm very happy with the pot still run. No funny issues, didn't run it for too long. As I said, it was only 1.5 liter charge. Alright, interesting. Pot still run is done. Got all the cups, roughly 40 ml per cup, and there is 22 cups in total. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it pairs now with the column still. So again, boiler is empty and we still got this 1.5 liter at 35% still left. So I am just going to add it straight. There we go. So I did assemble everything just to see how it will stack up, and I was happy, and then I disassembled again. So I'm going with the glass, side glass 4-inch with the bubble caps. So this will be our first separation point, where we will have that mini distillation right here at the bubble caps. You guys can go check out my previous video of while I explained the difference between bubble caps and perforated plates. It was a very interesting topic as well, and there's definitely some experiments that I do want to run with that, but I'm looking for a proper perforated plate, because this is still, yes, it is a perforated plate, but I still just use it in the side glass for my gin distillations as well. Alright, so boiler is charged with a 1.5 at 35% ABV. We've got a 4-inch side glass with the bubble caps, and there we have the alembic head. I am now just going to transfer it down to the induction stove. So obviously everything is a bit higher, and to have safety in mind as well, I'm deciding to keep the center of gravity low and take it down to the ground, and then we'll assemble the rest, and then I'll try to capture around here. I was thinking of putting everything on a table, but then it just tends to get too high, and you know, if something does fall over, it's not just going to fall over, it's going to fall from the table, off from the table as well. So I'll rather just have it straight here. I'm happy with this. So from here, what we then have got is the 2-inch glass side glass with the 4 bubble caps and small perforated plates as well. I made a nice video of how you can assemble this, so go check it out, and you can actually see exactly how each of these segments looks. It's actually very cool the way it is assembled. On here I've got my defraginator, but I'm not going to use it today. I'm actually using it again for height, just to able to lift everything up slightly so that I can be able to capture here. Otherwise the parrot was right underneath the table, then it wasn't really viable. And then for interesting purposes today, I've got my top thermometer on as well. I want to actually see how much of a difference the temperature right on top of the alembic head is against this one. You know, it should not change that much, as I'm not going to run the defraginator. So a lot of times what you will do is that you will run your reflux condenser or defraginator at a certain cooling water flow to push down that reflux, and then you will definitely see a temperature change between these two. You will tend to adjust on your cooling water for a certain temperature here to get that specific ABV that you want out. But that's not the experiment today, or the goal today. The goal today is just to run the still as a column still straight and see how it pairs, or how it's different between the pot still and the column still. So let me finish assemble this, and then we'll get going. Alright guys, this is the setup. Changed a few things, but I'm quite happy. So like I said, boiler, 4-inch bubble caps, alembic head, glass column, defraginator, temperature 180, condenser and parrot. So I'm definitely going to still have my alcohol meter inside to measure exactly the ABV as it comes out. I'm going to collect my cups here and stack them. So then we will see against all the cups that we got for the pot still, how many cups are we going to get for the column still, and especially also what's the ABV that's going to come out initially. So I'm going to crank up the plate, the heat source, get the cooling water open, and then we're going to go on with the run. Alright, for the column still, we did exactly the same, 1.5 litre at 35% charge in the boiler. Starting temperature was 26 degrees. It's now a little bit more in the afternoon, and it took very quick for my first drips to actually started filling the parrot. It took only 6 minutes, then the parrot started filling, and once my first accumulation in the parrot was up, it was already at 91% ABV, and it stayed at 91 for 3 cups, and then the next 3 cups was at 90, and then was 89, and it stayed fairly high for very long. If I look at it, even all the way to, what was this, cup number 8, yes, at cup number 8 it was still very high, 80% ABV, and then it just started dropping off very fast. You know, looking at 80, 68, 45, 20, 10, and then it was nothing. So it also shows that your column still give you that a lot more stability in the longer run. You get fewer cups out because your purity is so high, you're distilling out the alcohol very fast, and then you have that sudden drop at the end where you not really will have a lot of flavor in it. So that's why I said keep in mind that if you do columns runs or column still or type of packing, it will take away your flavor. So if you're looking for something with flavor, rather go for a pot still or configure your still in a way that it is more flavorable, or more favorable for a pot still than a column still. But if you want that little bit of extra yield or a little bit of higher ABV, you can change it or adapt it to be a little bit of a column still, but just keep that flavor in mind. Overall, my run for my column still was only 55 minutes. Also show that it's much faster as it's only distilling out the pure alcohol, and you don't really want anything in the tails or any flavor as well. And yes, like I said, my first drips was out very quick, 6 minutes. Very good run, very much enjoyed it, and a very great comparison between the column still and the pot still. Hey guys, alright, what a run. This was quite interesting. Alright, so I've got all my jars or my cups lined up here right on the table. So these are all from the pot still, and these are all from the column still. So immediately you can see the difference that is there. So let's break down the numbers. On the pot still, I have 26 cups of 40 milliliters each. And on the column still, I have got 16 cups. Alright, so where did the heads start fading? So to maybe give you an idea, they started at a 85% ABV but quickly dropped down, and the column still started at 91 and stayed there for quite a while before it really started fading. So the heads really kept longer for the column still, you know, showing that purity, where it immediately dropped down for your pot still. That was expected. Then also, you know, where was our hearts clean? You know, where do we feel like we were getting some good product out? So if I look at my cups and I numbered them, so roughly from cup number on the pot still, from cup number 1 to cup number 17 was clean hearts. It was really good. It still had a little bit of the gin flavor, but fairly clean, no issues. On the column still, cups from about number 3 till roughly about 9, you know, 8 to 9 was very clean. The first 3 cups were very high, you know, 91% ABV, and it was just, you know, harsh. There's a lot of alcohol. It's hot in the mouth. So I would say anything from cup number 3 to cup number 9 was fairly a little bit better. How long did the tails drag out? So on our pot still, the tails dragged out for 9 cups from the end, and I stopped it at 10% ABV, where the column still only lasted for 5 cups and also stopped it at 10 ABV, but it really dropped. You know, if I look at my notes again, So we were fairly, ABV was slowly going down for pot still, and roughly at cup number 22 was where I reached the 40% ABV. Now that's more or less always why I tend to start my cuts for my tails to get my flavors out. So I aim for 40, and then from 40 I break down my cuts. So on the pot still at cup number 22, we reached the 40% ABV. On the column still was quite interesting. At cup number 11, it just started dropping down. You know, we were reaching 90, 89, 88, 87, and then all of a sudden went from 80 to 68, 45, 20. It just dropped as the cups went down. So it also shows how it more or less stabilizes in your column still, you know, keeping that purity there, and then when there's no more alcohol left in the boiler to distillate out, it just drops. Where your pot still will tend to drag out that ABV, you know, drag out your alcohol, and that's also why you have a lot more flavors and a lot more smearing effect as well on your pot still. All right, so that is the numbers. So you can also visually just see, you know, look how wide of a results this is, where this is very tight. It also shows you've got a lot more flavor potential of carrying over on here, and here is a lot less flavor, a lot more purity coming through here. So let's have a side-by-side comparison. I've got a nice table. So first of all, we're just going to compare straight what is pot still versus a column still. So ABV on a pot still will definitely be lower, and you will have a higher ABV on your column still. So flavor, you will have a strong flavor on pot still, definitely, and you have a much cleaner or a neutral taste or flavor on your column still. Your cut range will be wide on your pot still and very tight on your column still. Yield of clean spirit, you will have a very low yield of clean spirit, where here you will have a very high yield of clean spirit. You know, if I look at this, you got fairly up till here, these cups are everything clean, and there the tail drops off. Where here you've got a lot more wider range and not as clean if you're going for neutral spirits. So what is pot still best for? You know, if you want this flavor, you're looking at a whiskey or a rum or a brandy. Pot still is excellent for that. If you want a vodka or a gin or a base for a gin or a neutral alcohol, your column still is definitely the way to go. All right, so as it was a slightly gin mixture, I did have a taste as it went through, and I must say definitely on the pot still, you still had that flavor that came through a lot on your cuts. You know, maybe the first 10 not as much, but the last 15 definitely there was still a lot of flavor that came through. Yeah, literally maybe this last 4 was having a little bit of flavor, but most of the top 10 was definitely clean alcohol. You can't really taste any flavor at all there. So I would say you got a lot more character flavor pulled through here, with a little character flavor that pulls through here. So it also shows how purity and flavor, you know, they pull at opposite ends. You know, if you want more flavor, you have to configure your still in a certain way. But if you want the purity, you would then change it to a different way. So it's always, you have to keep that in mind. So let's take it back to chemistry. You know, what actually happened inside your still? So because your column still had more phase changes, you know, there was more separation. You know, you're talking about the 4-inch bubble cap at the bottom, and each of these bubble caps here, you had a phase change here, you had a separation here, so there was a lot more. And with that more separation also comes fewer flavor that started going through. So, you know, not a lot of flavor compounds can carry over, because that flavor compounds would then condense again and then send back as reflux, and only your pure vapors will go up. So definitely a column still will strip your flavor, and where a pot still will definitely carry over that flavor as well. All right, so what does it mean for hobby distillers? You know, we're looking at questions, you know, using a pot still, it's hard to get neutral alcohol out. You can see that you've got a wider cut range, and there's not really a point where it really got stable. So you've got that smearing effect going through everything. So it's very hard to get a neutral alcohol out of a pot still. You have to keep on distilling, keep on distilling, keep on distilling. You're maybe going to distill it 3 to 4 times to really get that high purity up. Where you will have a column still and you can maybe do it once, adjust a bit on the reflux, and you can have that purity immediately with your first run. Second thing also to consider is, sometimes they say that whiskey tastes too clean in a column mode. You stripped out too much of the flavors. So it's sometimes not very ideal to have a whiskey or make a whiskey when you have a bubble caps and a column still. Take out your bubble caps and just use your column still if you have. Or if you have got some type of packing, you maybe reduce on your packing to still keep some of those flavors and not strip all the flavors away. A lot of people will blame a recipe saying that, this guy said this is such a cool recipe and it's such great tasting whiskey, but it was just maybe the way they configured the setup that might be the problem and not the whiskey itself. So also keep that in mind. If you do find someone that has a great recipe, or you drink someone's product that they made and it really tastes nice, ask him the recipe, but also ask them how did they distill it, because that's maybe also the key point that you might miss. Alright guys, I hope you like this and come to realize that your still isn't just one still, it's many different stills, just depending on how you configure it. And that's also the reason why I like this modular still so much. You can easily remove 1 or 2 components and have a completely different still. If you're aiming for one specific product, yes, build your still, have it well lit up that it can only run that way, that's perfectly fine. It's all about your preference and what you want. I like this because I can change it up and do different type of things, but you might be only focusing on one thing, and that's 100% fine. I'm up for anybody that has that capacity and have that natural instincts to build a still on their own. I really commemorate you guys on that. Alright, if this guys helped you to understand your still a little bit better, give it a like and subscribe, and definitely tell me, how do you run your still? Do you run it more a column still configuration or a pot still configuration? Drop it in the comments, and I would definitely like to hear what you have to say. That's all that I have for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, remember to be awesome, to be kind, and be yourself. Cheers.